Have you ever felt so alone that you wonder if you were just completely disconnected from everything? Have you ever been involved in something where you felt like you just completely disappeared or were just part of it wholeheartedly? Hopefully, you've had both of those experiences at one point in your life. Like, not really the first one as much, but they're experiences that are common to all of us. Is how we start to see ourselves as both a whole in and of ourselves and a part of something bigger. There's a word that's being used for this in the literature that I am not a huge fan of, and that is a Holon, that we are something uniquely ourselves and some part of something bigger. In fact, part of a lot of things bigger. So we're going to talk about, I love this word, Holons today as we walk together down Creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan druid and sous chef to the dog.
And today we're going to be talking about just my absolute favorite word ever, holons. We're probably going to talk about it in other words, parts, wholes, anything, beings. I kind of wonder why the word monad went away, because I feel like that is in some way, a monad's inseparable. So there's just something about saying the word plet. I'm not the biggest fan of, but the idea is very powerful and very helpful. And so we're going to dig into it. This is continuing our series where we talked first on Monday about the noosphere. Yesterday, we talked about the third story. Today, we're going to take all of that a step further and start looking at the structure. I was debating whether or not they should have an S on it, but I think both structure and structures is actually the right way to say it. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be, on whatever the app is you're listening to us on. We do 5 original Christopagan and Druid episodes Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss a thing because we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up. All right, let's get into it now, shall we?
The Holons are coming. The Holons are coming. If that makes sense, you're part of one of our Holons.
Oh, I think what I have against this word, we have used so many Greek and Greek sounding terms for science fiction that it feels like a science fiction term. Like, it feels so sci-fi to me. It feels akin to the word Cylon in my head. And I think that's what I hold against it most dearly. But like I said, the utility of this idea is very helpful. It helps us to understand how we interrelate with things and how things interrelate with each other. Basically, the idea is that a holon is a thing that is intrinsically complete or whole in and of itself, that within itself, within that circle, it has all the parts it needs to function. You can think about this the way you would think about your body. You, as your body, are technically a holon, right? You have your cells, you have all of the things, the flora and fauna in your gut, all of those relationships that make up you are enclosed literally in this flesh suit that makes you a distinct entity. But cannot and do not live in isolation, and no holon does. If you do not take in food and water and air, the community will fall apart. There will be rioting, there will be violence, and the whole thing will collapse in on itself. This kind of cellular way understanding structure is something that we can apply from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top. That when we start seeing how these intrinsic cells, these nested cells, interact with each other, then we can start talking about the relationships there. So you as a self have all of these internal relationships. There's the various gut bacteria, flora and fauna that help you digest your food. There are flora and fauna that clean up the system and help prevent diseases and other invaders. We have an entire ecosystem on our skin that helps to keep our skin clean and so protect us from foreign invaders that are trying to get in. We can look at each and every one of those as a self in and of its in isolation. And we can keep going down to the atomic bonds holding everything together, all the way to the quantum level parts inside of a complete system, inside of a complete system, inside of a complete system, all the way up. And that's just you. That's just me. When we start looking at this in the way that we interact with the world around us, we can start seeing the various circles that we inhabit, whether that's our friend groups. And I said that yes with a S on the end, because very often we have separate and distinct friend groups that may have some overlap amongst them, but they're generally organized by interest and what have you. So they're not always matched one for one with each other. We have our families, communities, the neighborhood we live in. We have the inn that we live in. We have the state, county, country, city that we live in. And then we have the world itself. And then we can keep going up, just like we went down smaller and smaller and seeing all of the different holes with parts in it. We can keep going up and find the same thing. What makes this helpful is giving us a tool by which to start discussing each of these things and the myriad interactions within them. One of the, I think the biggest problems when we talk about the Earth as a planet is we start breaking it up into different parts. We have the atmosphere over here and the biome over there, and we have
this continent,
that continent, this river, that river, these oceans. There are things that we're starting to see that when we are looking at it from a macro level, we can see the Earth breathe. We can watch the oxygen levels rise and fall in certain areas, and we can see larger systems that are at work and at play. At those lower levels, new systems and different systems are engaged. And the interplay between those systems is what makes for the weather that we experience, the very local daily level, as opposed to the much larger climate level. Weather itself is influenced by the mountains, valleys, the trees, pavement, wind, air pressure. All of these different components come together that if we're just looking at one in isolation, we miss seeing the whole systemic whole. Having just a standard reminder that these systems tend to group together into self-organizing systems that exhibit their own emergent properties helps us understand how to interact with them and how they actually function in and of themselves.
I think that's the other part of this is as we are able to start to see these different holons and how they stack, we can then start to look at the two drivers, this drive of self-assertion and the drive of integration, which is one of the major things with this study on how to see those interrelations, how those relationships interrelate with each other and interact.
Yeah, because those are the two main impulses between these, well, of each individual whole. Each holon itself has this instinct to either self-assert and isolate itself from the others and wall itself off, as times where it just becomes absorbed into the larger group, into the larger whole, and operates functionally in some way within it, or is absorbed to the point where its contribution is negligible to the whole. This is, again, something I try to bring up to people when we're talking about climate and climate change, because large companies want to offshore the responsibility onto people, and that is never going to help us. The actual amount of carbon that an individual is responsible for is negligible. It's a rounding error in the math when we're talking about climate change. But large corporations produce the lion's share of the carbon pollution that goes out into the atmosphere and is driving climate change. They're trying to get us to think about our carbon footprint and how we are having an effect on things when, again, our input is negligible. If every human on Earth changed their ways and did everything that they could sustainably, and the corporations did not, it will not affect the actual outcome. Like we are literally a rounding error. What we need to be doing is getting rid of fossil fuels and figuring out ways that we can gear our systems not to use them, require them, or process them, which is one of the main ways these are put out into the world, and how to bring other efficiencies to bear to bring our impact down, whether that's through industrial farming or any of the other things that we do to feed, clothe, and propel ourselves around the world.
So a lot of that boils down to, it goes back to the Buddhist principles, it's this middle way, and in that healthy balance between the two. As we like to say, it's finding that healthy resonance. I'm referring to an instrument that when the Buddha was talking about an instrument that was the string on the instrument is too loose, it does not make a sound at all. You can't play it. If you tighten it too tight, it'll snap and break and you won't be able to play it. But when you tune it just right, when you have a healthy balance between the two, that's where the notes happen. That's where the music happens, literally, in this case. And when exploring holons and looking at the drives of self-assertion and integration, trying to find that balance, that happy resonance between the two, you can look at it when looking at the government structure in the United States. You have the holon of an individual state, for instance, as its entity, and its self-assertion and integration with the greater holon of these United States, with the 50 of them. And there's always this tension between the two. And actually, the beauty of the system is the resonance in that tension between the state's self-assertion for its own individuality and being able to govern the people of that state in the way they want to be governed, along with how they need to integrate and get along with the other states, and how the federal system is there to help all of them get along together.
The purpose of starting to see systems in this way is to start seeing everything you're encountering as a system, both a self-contained system that has moving parts within itself and a part of a larger system that is operating above it. Now, a individual person, place, or thing can take part in and participate in multiple larger systems. When you start seeing how it functions within them, you have a means by which to start diagnosing and fine-tuning the system itself. So throughout this week, we have talked to you about the noosphere, the way thought is being transformed into an active layer onto the way evolution and the world itself functions. We've talked to you about the third story and how we need to come up with a solution to the meaning crisis. This level of systemic thinking helps us understand our basic interconnection with everything else. We are never alone because we are a galaxy with billions of things living within us, but we are also always part of bigger systems, even if we don't see them. That is a second story, if you listen to yesterday's episode, way of looking at this. And the goal is to start developing those third stories. How do we interconnect and see and operate within these systems and structures? Are any of them unjustified? How are they functioning? What are the moving parts? You see, the way that our modern world has structured itself, we take a lot of these built-in systems for granted. We don't understand there's something added on and not of nature themselves. We all grew up under capitalism, so we assume that wage work now is kind of wage work people have always done. We project into the past where, a farmer would raise their crops, take it to market, sell it, and come home. And we think that was a form of the kind of capitalism that we have today, when it was not. We don't see the system that we are operating in and how it differed from systems in the past, and how it could be changed into various systems in the future. It's accepted almost like oxygen. This systematic thinking helps us understand what is intrinsically built in, what is a function or a natural law, if you will, and what isn't. Exists whether we want it to or not, whether we believe it does or not. Gravity is something that exists. Supply and demand curves ain't real. They're in a fuzzy, strange place where they both are and are not real. And until we can start putting things into these proper levels and layers where we understand what are the stories we're telling ourselves and what are the systems that we've built and what circles have we surrounded ourselves with, it's hard for people to understand how change could actually happen. It's really scary for a lot of people when we start having these systemic and start discussing these things, because it challenges their basic experience of the world. When you tell somebody that, would you like a glass of hydrogen monoxide, they tend to move back. That's water. It's just, we're talking about it from what it is from a chemistry perspective, rather than just the more commonplace word. And that trick is actually used a lot to scare people from doing actions that often the powerful, the rich, and the greedy don't want them to take, where they will use a term that a person is not familiar with and scare them so that they don't actually work for a goal that they would actually like to achieve. as we start allowing ourselves to see the parts that are moving around us, the holes that we exist in, and start identifying them, labeling them, and understanding how we move back and forth through them and how we participate in them, as well as how others participate in them, we can start seeing the flaws in those systems and start addressing them. You can't fix a problem until you see it.
Yeah.
You just can't. And this is one of the best systems. Like, I feel like I'm saying the word system so much, it's going to lose all meaning, but this is one of the best systems that I have found to be able to isolate and examine each part on any scale that we want to look at. Because all the way up to the noosphere, which is a superorganism, all the way down to all of the little component parts of you and me, we can now talk about it at each layer, each slice of reality, from the biggest to the smallest.
I was just thinking, like, for instance, with scarcity, this myth, you got to get yours before someone else takes it. That becomes the story that's being shared. And scarcity is only real until it isn't. It's another one of those that is and isn't. We, the people of Earth, used to have scarcity of food up until, 50 years ago? 100 years ago,
About
somewhere
80
in there.
years.
Yes, scarcity of food was a real thing. We weren't able to produce enough food to feed everyone on the planet. And so people went hungry. Then we solved that with technology advancements and stuff. With all of that, it's not a real thing anymore in that sense. As a whole, it's self-assertion.
Self-assertion. Not it's the companies.
Companies.
Even though we make enough food to feed everyone on Earth, companies restrict the flow of food so that people go hungry. They charge rates for that food that makes it so that people can't afford to buy a lot of it and thus go hungry. The systems are in place to prevent that food from reaching the people that need it.
Yeah. And I guess another way to look at this from the Holon perspective is like when you're looking at certain societal challenges, right? Like wages versus the cost of goods and stuff. If you actually start looking at those as their own individual wholes and how they interact with each other, you can get a better idea of, it's nice to raise the wages, but if the costs of basic food goods like food and shelter, if they go up even higher, then the increase in wages won't actually matter. It doesn't matter if you're making twice what you were making 20 years ago. If you're spending 3 times what you were spending 20 years ago on the basic necessities, food and shelter, transportation, then you moved at a net negative.
Or a better way of looking at it is if you're raising wages to the poor and allowing the wealthy to still maintain their exorbitant incomes that they need, they're going to have to raise prices on everything to pay and keep their own extravagant lifestyles going. So
and when you start seeing how they interrelate, you can then see, arguing over one part or arguing over a different one isn't going to actually solve the problem, and taking sides on one or the other isn't really going to help to a whole lot either.
You see, the problem is not whether or not wages should be raised, it's whether there should be a cap on earnings. And we are arguing at the bottom when we need to be arguing at the top. Because what we're having right now is a problem of inequitable wealth distribution. And that's only going to get worse as things go on. When you start seeing the moving parts, you see you're distracted by, if the wages go up, of course, we're going to have to charge more for the food. Maybe you don't give extravagant bonuses to the C-suite and cover the cost. If you're already making millions of dollars a year, you're not going to miss money because you're just not. And that's where the sleight of hand comes in. But you need to see the full system. And until you're looking at the full system, until you're looking at that entire whole, you're allowed to be distracted just to look at the small part at the bottom. Well, of course, if we give the poors more money, that's going to mean the poors are going to have to spend more to buy food, when that is not the case. There's a whole food chain above continuously draining money out of the system.
And then, of course, the worst of all tyrannies is allowed to step in and go, it's too big of a problem, so we'll live with it.
Yeah. But that's why it's important to be able to see these
Yeah.
systems as they're functioning and see all of the moving parts. One of the biggest tools that's used against us is this ability to be distracted. And once we are distracted, it is easier to either get us to do full-on self-assertion, and I don't have to take the vaccine because I'll be fine, and not see how that is going to impact other people around you, or to be so absorbed in a cause that you, storm the White House because that's how you have been tricked into believing democracy works. Both are disorders within a system. We have to find ways to fine tune things to keep things in balance. That's where resonance comes in, and that's where proper functioning of these systems comes in. And I wish we had more time to talk about that, but I guess we're going to have to do that tomorrow when we talk about Holon and how groups can function together and create new social orders and structures that are able to maintain themselves from the ground up and not the top down. Yeah, this is kind of a two-parter. In the middle of a series, we did that. But I hope this is giving you a starter on this. I don't know if you've heard about Holons before. Holons. These have been discussed for years now. I'm trying to make everything as simple as I can here to make this as accessible to the most people. I think the biggest problem with a lot of these thoughts is that they are webbed up in so much academic jargon that it is hard to talk about them without having to define 1,000 terms before you get started. I'm trying to find ways to break through that so we can start having valid discussions about this and dig into this more deeply. And that's what our new website, Fractal, is all about. What we're going to be building over there is a place where we're going to be discussing all of these issues and trying to figure out a way to both deal with the meaning crisis and think of better ways to do social order, and how with all of this is interacting with the new sphere and how we can rightfully and live with integrity within it. If you haven't checked it out, head over there and check it out. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening over there. That's going to be an ever evolving project. We're going to be pushing updates over there as often as we possibly can, and definitely check it out. Is this the first time you've heard about any of this? I'd love to know in the comments. How did I do in simplifying it? I know I probably shaved off a lot of edges that some people are going to wish I had left on, and some more elements of system complexity that people would like to have seen left on. But for a introduction like this, I think we did okay.
Hey, appropriate for this episode.
So let me know what you think down in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube, Spotify, or CreationsPaths.com, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say you can leave a comment, they don't notify us, so we won't know. But you can leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to CreationsPaths.com, click on chat, and you can leave a message there, and we will see it, and we will be able to get back to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars, you can pass our way. We offer monthly and annual memberships. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both, and you can support us using the Cash App hashtag CreationsPaths. Thank you to everybody who does that. We are ever so grateful. Thank you so much. You all really do help us keep the lights on, keep a roof over our head, and food on our table. If we've ever said anything that's helped you out, please share it with others. That helps us out more than you know. Oh, blessed Danu, who is ever flowing and moving through all things, who is both the mother of the gods, the mother of us all, and the great mother of earth. Help us to find our way as we're trying to see all of the brilliant and beautiful moving parts that make this world what it is, and as we understand how the energies of life flow through it. Amen.
Amen.